Ronnie Boyd DeVoe Jr. and his partner Marvetta Bozeman are both here. They are known as the Wonder Twins of real estate, and they are
Yes.
out on a mission to help folks like Dr. Baxter and others who face this kind of discrimination. So, welcome to the show, Ronnie. Welcome, Marvetta. Thank you both so much for joining me. Thank you for the work that you're doing. Congratulations on your project together, the Wonder Twins of real estate. Let me start with you, Marvetta. I don't know if you had read about Dr. Baxter's story. If you had, or even just listening to me recount the story, what's your initial reaction to what happened to her?
Wow, I hadn't heard it. I mean, it is so sad. It's sad that here in 2024 that we are still facing these same types of discrimination. And it's crazy that to think that someone with her stature, it shouldn't happen to anybody, but that it's still happening. And to hear that it's someone 84 years old, right? That you would think that as of time and they've seen the progress and everything from our community and what we have to offer, and thinking that some of those thought processes that was once in their generation that is swept away, but it's not. And it's so sad to see that it's still happening in housing, but we're not surprised.
Yes.
Yeah, Ronnie, this was Virginia Beach.
Wow.
Obviously, Virginia is a part of the South, so maybe some folks would say the South hasn't changed very much. But I just read this story, and like Marvetta, not that you should have to be a molecular biologist to not be discriminated against, but I think what really struck me about this story was how honest her real estate agent was in sharing with her why the seller was pulling out, and then reading the statistics in this New York Times article that 87% of real estate agents engage in this kind of racial steering, where basically if you're black, they're only showing you homes in black neighborhoods, or if you're white, they're showing you homes in white neighborhoods. What have you and Marvetta been doing to try to combat some of this systemic racism and these barriers that we know black homeowners in particular face when they go out into the real estate market?
Right. Well, thank you for the opportunity, first of all, to just have a real conversation about something that we're facing in our community, and I appreciate it. And far too often, we're hearing these horror stories about these types of things that happen in our society. Right here in Atlanta, Georgia, Mr. Tyler Perry was almost a victim of something like that himself, but he showed a white face. And when they found out he was a black man purchasing this property, they wanted to rescind the deal, and all of these different legal actions came at him. And fortunately, he was able to push through, as this amazing, beautiful woman is able to do herself. But I think for us, we're really on a mission, and our movement is to make sure that we get the information out there, right? Ever since the
Mhm.
federal government opened up housing to more individuals, let's say in the 1930s, all the way up until the 1960s, it started at 30% home ownership, right? And then it moved up to 60% home ownership, of which 98%, 90 plus percent were white individuals, right?
Mhm.
So them being able to get into generational wealth, this thing that we call generational wealth through home equity, and really just everything that comes with owning and having a home and living in a beautiful community, and not allowing us access to that. And to this very day, we're still facing those things, appraisal bias. I'm sure we've all heard the story of a black family, with a $900,000 appraisal from one individual, right? Thinking and knowing that it was a black family, and they sent a white pseudo buyer, not buyer, but owner in there, right? And 500,000 more on an appraisal just because this other individual thought it was a white family that was selling this home. So I think getting the information out there is key, and letting people understand and know the numbers and the history and how it's baked into so many different systems and policies, and the Fair Housing Act, and a lot of these things that have come on board is almost like smokescreen to a certain extent, because when you look at black home ownership, right, in 1968, when the Fair Housing Act was passed, we were sitting around 45%, right? And at the peak of Black home ownership in 2004, we're at 50%, right? But our white counterparts are 23 points higher than us in home ownership, sitting at just about 70%. So that entry level into generational wealth, again, through the equity in a home, we've just been pushed to the side. And now 2004, the peak of Black home ownership. You think a lot of these policies and various things that have been put on the books to speak to fair housing would be working. Now in 2024, we're back down to those same numbers that we had in 1968 when it was legal to discriminate. So we have to get this information out there.
Wow. So we've lost ground rather than growing home ownership to get to that 70% plus that white families have. We've actually had seen a decrease in home ownership.
Right.
That in some numbers, as you said, Ronnie, suggested we're back to, the numbers we were in the 40s and 50s. Let me ask you, what is happening, Marvetta? Obviously, there is the blatant discrimination, like in the case of Dr. Baxter. That's happening. Obviously, it's the issue of mortgage lending and all the banks, as recently like City National Bank here in Los Angeles, that just got dinged for redlining and not making loans in Black and brown neighborhoods in the same way that they have made loans in white neighborhoods. So we know that's also a barrier. But I wonder how much of some of what I'll call the pop culture real estate wealth building experts, how much that may have an impact on home ownership. If you are on Instagram, TikTok, any of these social media platforms, you've probably seen some of these folks who fancy themselves experts in real estate, experts in wealth building. And I've seen some of these folks telling people that home ownership is a bad investment, that people shouldn't buy homes. Talk to us about the impact some of those internet experts may be having on Black home ownership.
Well, yeah, the internet experts, that's what they would like to think they are, but they're sending the wrong message to the community. It's the complete wrong message. And we speak a lot to that because Ron and I are so passionate about truly advocating through education and through making sure that everyone understands exactly what's happening. Some of the bigger issues that we are seeing is the economic disparities as it comes to the wealth gap in income. So in our communities, because we're still making far less than what our white counterparts are making, we are seeing a huge increase in financing issues, as you just spoke to, because the income is not there. Then you're not being able to qualify for the application for the mortgage loan. You have the issues, whereas you'll say, okay, this is my income. I'm already making less. So now it comes to saving for a down payment. So there's no saving for the down payment. So then we have our Instagram famous agents jumping online saying, yes, everybody, come on, let's go buy a house, without truly educating them and taking them through the proper steps of what does that look like? How do we change the mindset? And that's one thing that we do as the Wonder Twins of real estate is we go out and we educate. We talk about the differences, how to save, how to get with your credit, how to make sure that you're in the right position to purchase, because we absolutely know that there is the access to financing, there's residential segregation that we have to deal with. And these are a lot of the things that the Instagram, the Facebook famous agents are not speaking to. When you're not speaking and making sure that everyone understands, if you don't have the certain income, if certain resources are not within your community and you're making far less, then what do? They put everybody in streamline and redline them into one in particular community. And you know what happens then? You don't get the best schools, you don't get the best healthcare. So it's kind of like a whole domino effect. And we're seeing that. And we're pleading with individuals like, listen, get on this mission with us. Join what we're doing with, National Association of Real Estate Brokers, NAREB, where we advocate for democracy in housing, because it's not all about like, yes, get the big commission check, walk up in there in your nice clothes and putting your Chanel bag on the table. That's what they're showing, which is not really representing the bigger issues that we're having as it relates to housing.
I'm glad you brought that up, particularly that Chanel bag piece. I'm gonna hide mine under the table right now, but no, great point. Because what I want to talk about is this notion again, fueled by what we see on Instagram. You know, people living their best life, that best chapter of their life, posting their big house, their mansion, their palatial estate, and causing some folks, and I experienced this with some people that I know, not wanting to make what otherwise would be called a starter home purchase,
Yes.
feeling like because I don't have, a 5 bedroom, 4 bathroom, 3 car garage house, that, jumping in the market where I can is not enough. And so folks are being
Right.
resident, they're being hesitant, I should say,
Yes.
about jumping into the real estate market, taking advantage of the opportunities that are there at the price point that they can afford, that matches with their credit and their down payment and their income, and just opting out of home ownership because they have this notion that somehow home ownership has to be like what they see on the Housewives or some of these reality shows. So when we come forward, I want to talk about how we break that mindset and
Right.
get younger people thinking about home ownership at a much earlier age, and even getting those folks maybe who've been in apartments most of their lives, because there's some people 50, 60, 70 years old. It's not too late for them to think about home ownership. Speak to how you and Marvetta and the educational work that you're doing is trying to break that stereotype, that myth, and get folks to understand that you got to get in where you fit in, and the most important thing is to jump into the real estate market, even if it is with that starter house.
That's right. Definitely. There's levels to this at the end of the day. And I've been on both sides of the equation, coming from the streets of Boston, Massachusetts. Lifetime renters is all that I knew. My grandparents, my aunts, my uncles, every cousins, everyone that I knew only rented. And as you said early on, for decades, at a time, 70, 80 years of age, still renting, somebody's project apartment or what have you. So for me, being able to really come out of that and seeing the blueprint when I began to go to school in the suburbs, and I had this host parent, white individual, white family, they were kind of my protector, excuse me, to a certain extent when I was out there. But to see the backyard, on an acre of land with the creek in the back and all of the above, there was a plan, a seed planted, for me at 11 years of age, and fourth grade. So going home to my mom and saying, I'm going to buy us a house in California one of these days, speaking that into existence at 11. And then at 17, because of the hard work we put in as New Edition, being able to buy that home. And it was a $200,000 home. I'm this cat from New Edition. At the time, the perception would have been that I would have bought this mansion in Bel Air somewhere for probably $5 million or what have you. But no, 200,000. And I didn't even really understand the magnitude of it at the time. But fast forward 1987, when I purchased that home, I sold it in 1990 to purchase another one. We needed a little bit more space or what have you. I sold it, bought it for 200,000, sold it for 400,000. Right. Like almost less than 3 years later. Like just think about that. And I didn't even understand how equity works and all of the above at the time, because we're on the road doing our entertainment thing. But then I began to reflect on that, probably 15 years later, once things slowed down, and as a intelligent older individual that really wanted to understand how I create and close this generational wealth gap, right? When you look at the white American household sitting at $250,000 of savings and net worth, right? And you look at the Black family sitting at 10 times less at 25,000. Like, how do you figure out how to fix that, right? So becoming a real estate agent and gravitating back to something that I love to do, which was architecture and drafting when I was in high school before we started doing our entertainment thing, I just wanted to make sure that I was getting people that look like me, that come from the same place that I come from, that may not have that hope and that desire to, or even the opportunity or the access, or even really the picture of it to a certain extent, right? Like all we see, we're a product of our atmosphere and what we see our mothers and our grandparents do. Um, so we really honestly just, it's not about putting money under the mattress anymore, right? It's about now taking it and putting it into something that's going to appreciate and value ultimately. And for us, it's about changing the mindset. And you said something earlier about millennials, right? When you look at millennials and the fact that they're not really thinking about purchasing a home now because of how they may have been tainted by the ups and downs and the roller coaster ride of real estate, and them seeing their parents potentially lose homes to, the crisis in '08 and some of these other things and COVID and all of the above. But here in Atlanta, there's almost 200,000 mortgage ready millennials, Black millennials, right? And if you multiply that across the nation, you're sitting at a couple million people that can actually access the opportunity to turn 200K based on leveraging a down payment and all the things that you have to put in place properly, right? And turning that into 400K and potentially, 3 years from now, right? So we have to get the information out there, and that's what this is all about. And I appreciate your platform.
I'm so glad, Ronnie, that you spoke about what you did in terms of buying your first house as a member
Mm-hmm.
of New Edition and not coming to California, which is where I am in Los Angeles, and buying the big mansion in Beverly Hills or Bel
That's
Air, but buying out at that time was still an expensive house. And when people hear
right.
the real estate prices in big cities like LA, San Francisco, they think, "Oh my God, 200,000." You and I know that $200,000 house was not a mansion in a place like Los Angeles, but it appreciated, it doubled in value in those few short years that you owned it.
Mhm.
And because you are an entertainer, because you are a successful member of this legendary group, New Edition, because you are a member of this legendary group, Bell Biv DeVoe, and you've had access to money that most people can never even dream of. I think what you're doing is even more important because you're able to say, look, don't just sit around and idolize entertainers and sports figures. You too can get a piece of this American dream. And that's what I think is missing oftentimes. And no shade to entertainers, but
Mhm.
folks idolize and revere entertainers, and people are sitting around expecting that on a $50 or $60,000 a year salary, they're going to be able to buy the kind of house that you could
Mhm.
buy, or
Right.
what you make. And it's not about doing that. We got to stay in our lanes and do what it is that people can do at their level. And Marvetta, speaking to that, so many Black folks do own homes. There are a lot of older people. And what I've seen happen in LA communities, a lot of the Black communities here, is that when those homes are passed on to kids, kids lose them. These
Yes.
are mortgage-free homes, but the kids don't have the interest in the homes. They don't fix them up. They don't pay the property taxes. And we are losing valuable assets in our community. Speak to how you are educating folks about the significance of grandmama's house and how
Yes.
to keep grandmama's house in the family.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that because we've actually been on a 9-city building Black wealth tour. And one of the topics is what to do with Big Mama's house. And see, Areva, everything goes back to educating, 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 educating. Educating our community so they do know what to do with Big Mama's house. So what we've been doing is we're bringing out attorneys. They're coming out. They're speaking to everybody about, okay, this is what happens. You go and you make sure that you find the deed. Is the deed properly done? Because a lot of times Big Mama had the deed underneath the mattress, you know?
Mhm.
So now as we're going out, we're speaking to now the grandmothers because I'm a nana, right? So I'm now know that what I have to do is make sure that okay, my children, they know, where is the paperwork? How should the paperwork be set up? These are conversations that we must have. And it starts with education, because a lot of times people just simply do not know. They don't know what to do with the house. They don't know that, okay, the taxes are behind, but because Big Mama is a senior, we can go and there's resources out there to get help, to get financing, to get funding to help save her home so they're not taking her home for taxes. So a lot of everything that we're doing is just putting the information out there. Um, we're speaking it, we're yelling it, we're putting it out on social media. So they're just not seeing, yeah, come buy a mansion. We're coming to say, listen to what we have to say. Let's make sure that you truly understand that we would not have to worry about gentrification if somebody is coming to take our homes, if we were educated on how to keep our homes and even the homes that we do have. And it's just talking to one another, talking to that aunt and that uncle and saying, okay, what will happen with Big Mama's house once she passes on?
Great points. And I'm glad you all are addressing that because, like I said, particularly in a city like LA, you could literally be a millionaire from grandmama's house. You
Exactly.
could have a house that literally has over $1 million in equity in it. It may be in what would be considered a bad neighborhood or, not the best neighborhood, but just because of the way that real estate appreciates and supply and demand that drives the prices of real estate up in cities, housing, as we know, is always going to be a good investment. When we come forward, I want to talk about some practical tips that people can do. Like, how do you jump into the market if you are just graduating from college, or maybe you've been working on a job for 10 years and you don't know how to go about saving to get that down payment ready, or you believe that the housing in the neighborhoods where you want to live are too expensive? What are some practical things that everybody can do that right now is living in an apartment can start to think about to get into the real estate and to market and to start taking advantage of some of this incredible equity and appreciation so that they can create generational wealth? Real quickly, I got to ask you, Ron, most people are probably shocked to hear that you are this real estate mogul and educator and advocate. How did you, and I know you're still a part of New Edition, you're still performing,
Yeah.
but when did you decide that you wanted to spend a considerable amount of your time not entertaining folks, but really educating folks?
Yeah, it was out of necessity, honestly. And my transition between Los Angeles into Atlanta right around 2000. I moved here in 2001. Low glass ceiling, out there in Cali where you are, you got to be making a substantial amount of money to sustain, right? And when we think about home ownership, like I said, I've been on both sides of the fence, right? I've been a part of equity in my home and being able to pull that out to pay for various things. And for any other family, it could be school, it could be to start another business, to purchase some other investment property or what have you. But I've been on the bankruptcy side as well, right? Not really understanding once you're in the home, there's certain things that you have to do to stay in the home. So my second home that I purchased, I actually lost in bankruptcy because there was some rocky times as far as New Edition was concerned. So, and even Belle Biv DeVoe. So being away from that, it's like, okay, what is Ronald Boyd DeVoe Jr. gonna be known for, right? Outside of entertainment. And for me, I gravitated back to real estate, that love that I had when I was, trying to be a young architect. And I felt like for some reason, something was pulling me back to the thought of, okay, this home that I purchased for 200K and I sold for 400K. Like, come on, Ron, let's think about that. You're moving into Atlanta, this new territory, the Black Mecca, what is it going to be? And I started looking at investment properties with the, couple little nickels that I had at the time over by the old Georgia Dome in the West End, which is now thriving, where Big Mama, used to live. And now they're kind of pushing them out for gentrification and all of the above. And that's a whole nother story. But moved here in 2001. Somebody that was showing me the property said, you know what, Ron, you can have access to everything that I'm showing you for less than 75 hours of your time, right? So within a month, I was
Wow.
able to take this class to become a real estate agent. And it was less than $2,000 that I had to spend as far as the class and getting licensed and all of the above. And I said, what? You know, the type of money that I make as a member of New Edition was substantial, but the type of money that I can make over here in real estate is just as substantial. But the way to get in for me wasn't you have to learn something for the next 12 years and become a doctor to make the same kind of money. So that right there just sparked me in a way where I felt like, okay, now I have the access. I can search for my own investment properties. But really, it turned into a passion for the first time home buyer. Like, I just thought about what it felt like for me to be a part of handing my mom the keys, you know, to the first home that was owned for me and our family. I'm talking about cousins, friends, and everybody, right? So I wanted other people to feel that same thing. So in 2002, I got my license, started with Remax. 2006, started my own company, DeVoe Brokers Associates, and we've been kicking and screaming, you know, ever since then, honestly.
I'm so glad you talk about that feeling, because you're right. So many folks that grow up in apartments don't ever believe that they can be homeowners. Folks who grow up with parents who've already owned their homes think that that's the only thing you should do, but be a homeowner. So, Marvetta, how are you reaching those folks who grew up in apartments who don't think that they are ever able to purchase a home? How are you helping them break through, plan their down payment, break through all the racism that's out there in terms of how homes are shown, how banks are lending money? What are you doing to help first-time home buyers get into homes? And what advice can you give to my listeners and viewers on how to become a homeowner?
Well, one of the first things that I do is actually just being transparent, just being open, being authentic, and speaking my truth, letting people know my background. I was a young single mom, 17 years old when I had my first son, and I had a Section 8 voucher, so I had the housing, the subsidies, and all of that. So when I go out and when I speak to people and I tell them my story and tell them, listen, this is what I went through. When they see me now, they see, oh, she run with this New Edition cat, but I get out there and I speak and I tell them, and I just come from my heart. And I go and I, open up to say, you know what, this may be your situation. You may right now, have a voucher, you may have income from the state, but with hard work, preparation, and planning, you too can become a homeowner. So when we get a lot of different people in and I begin to speak to them, what does it look like? You wake up one morning and say, okay, I just want to buy a house. No, there's steps to this. We speak to credit. We let them make sure that they understand, what does it look like? Go ahead and pull your credit report. What does it look like to save for a down payment? Because if you're going FHA, they want 3.5% save. Closing costs is about 3% save. And most people don't have that. So we begin to educate and we train them, we develop them and start with them from where they are. And I mean, I sit in clients' faces sometimes, and I mean, they're crying, they're sobbing because they don't feel that it's possible. But when you get it, you speak to them and you give them the blueprint, when you give them the roadmap to say, first, let's start here. Let's start with educating you and speaking to you. Let me back up. First of all, we're going to get them to change their mindset to leave the apartment, right? First steps
Right.
first. And then speaking to the credit, speaking to the savings or the down payment. And then we continue to educate ourselves with what resources are out there. So they know that maybe they may not have down payment assistance, but we've sat into classes, we've sat into different workshops and seminars and worked with different municipalities to say, okay, this organization may have funds out there for the down payment. And then we even ask them, a couple of questions like, okay, so where are you from? Does your family have any land that you don't even know about? A lot of times when
Right.
we think about the great migration from the South up to the North, there's so much land out there that people simply do not know that their family owns. So sometimes
Right.
you can go back and you can look into this family, and it may be something like, hey, I can just go and build me something on my family's land. That has happened. So it's about making sure that you look at everybody as an individual basis. And that's one thing that we pride ourselves on doing, our entire team. We have a phenomenal team of agents that are trained in their like mind. they're not just about the check. They're not about just being an Instagram famous real estate professional. They're about making sure that they truly look at each individual's personal, what do they have going on? And then we go from there.
So, Ron, we have about 30 seconds left. I know you are in Atlanta. You guys, and Marvetta are the Wonder Twins of real estate. But what about folks who may be in New York or Chicago or LA? How do they get this information? How do they get to work with you all? How do they get all of this knowledge that you all are dropping today and obviously spreading all over this country?
Yeah, we about we about to give him Marvetta's phone number right now.
They can follow us on all our social media platforms.
Yes.
Just give us where they can find you guys. What's your social?
Yes, it's at DeVoeRealEstate.com. My social is at Big Ron DeVoe. Just Google me at the end of the day. Google my amazing Wonder Twin, Marvetta Bozeman, Real Estate Solutions. We have a school called Mission Bound Real Estate and Business Academy as well, because it's really about changing the mindset of our community, right? It's out there for us. As you can see, they're not going to give it to us. They're not handing it to us. To a certain extent, we got to take it and we got to pass the information on and continue to make this thing happen at the end of the day.
Well, thank you so much, Ron. Thank you so much, Marvetta. Congratulations on what you're doing. Good luck. I am so inspired by what you're doing. I have so many folks I'm going to hit up after this broadcast to tell them to make sure they check it out because they need to hear this information. I'm going to be looking for those tickets in the mail, Ron, for that concert.
Please.
Because you just promised me before my whole audience that you were sending me some tickets. So I'm going to be holding you to that.
Wait, Areva,
have you guys back.
Areva, hold on. You're in Cali, which is very close to Las Vegas, right? So July 3rd through July 13th, we have 6 shows as New Edition. I'm opening the door to the castle. So come on, what you gonna do?
You'll run my butt right through that door. Trust me, you're gonna hear from me.
Yes, indeed. Let's make it happen. All right.
Thank you guys. We're out of time. I gotta have you back. I'm gonna see you in Vegas, though, Ron. Trust me.
Okay.
Yes.
You guys be well and keep doing what you're doing.